You thought awakening would bring peace. Instead, you're drowning. You can't sleep, can't function, can't think straight. Everything feels too much, too intense, too real, too overwhelming. You're flooded with emotions you can't process, thoughts you can't organize, perceptions you can't handle. And you're terrified because nobody warned you it would feel like this. Nobody said awakening would feel like you're being ripped apart from the inside. Carl Jung spent his career studying why spiritual awakening overwhelms people so completely. And what he discovered will change everything about how you understand what's happening to you. Because Jung found that the overwhelm isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's proof you're going through genuine transformation. And the reasons why it feels unbearable reveal exactly what your psyche is doing beneath the surface chaos. Today I'm revealing why Jung said spiritual awakening feels overwhelmingly intense, what's actually causing the flood, and why resisting the overwhelm is what makes it unbearable. This isn't about managing symptoms. It's about understanding what's really happening when your system feels like it's collapsing under the weight of transformation. Here's what Jung understood that changes everything. Awakening overwhelms you because you're not just learning new things or having new experiences. You're dismantling your entire psychological operating system while it's still running, like trying to rebuild a plane mid-flight. Your ego structure, your emotional regulation, your sense of reality, everything is being deconstructed and reconstructed simultaneously. And your nervous system wasn't designed to handle this level of transformation while maintaining normal function. Jung called this the ordeal of transformation, and he observed that people undergoing genuine awakening all report the same experience: unbearable overwhelm. Not because they're weak or unprepared, but because awakening places demands on the psyche that exceed what it was built to manage. You're processing decades of repressed material, integrating expanded consciousness, and rebuilding identity, all while trying to function in daily life. Most spiritual teachers tell you awakening brings peace, clarity, bliss. But Jung told the truth. Awakening brings chaos first. Overwhelming, disorienting, exhausting chaos. And this chaos isn't a problem to fix. It's the mechanism of transformation itself. The first reason why it feels so overwhelming explains what's actually flooding your system. Jung's first insight. Awakening overwhelms you because it forces you to process decades of unfelt emotions, unprocessed trauma, and repressed experiences all at once. Not gradually, simultaneously. Your psyche opens like a dam breaking, and everything you've been holding back floods through you faster than you can integrate it. Think about your life before awakening. Every painful experience you didn't fully feel, every emotion you suppressed to function, every trauma you compartmentalized to survive, all of it got stored somewhere, in your body, your unconscious, your shadow. You built walls to keep it contained, but awakening dissolves those walls. One of Jung's patients described this flooding. I spent 3 decades being fine. Then awakening hit, and suddenly I was feeling everything I'd ever avoided. Grief from losses 20 years ago, rage at my parents from childhood, terror from traumas I thought I'd processed, all of it surfacing at once. I'd be doing dishes and suddenly sobbing uncontrollably, driving and have to pull over from rage, sitting at work and get hit with waves of fear. Jung said this was my psyche purging decades of repressed material, but experiencing it all simultaneously was unbearable. This is what Jung meant by the return of the repressed. Before awakening, you had mechanisms keeping painful material buried, defense mechanisms, dissociation, compartmentalization, all working to keep you functional by keeping you unconscious. But awakening strips away these defenses, and without them, everything surfaces. The overwhelm comes from volume and speed. You're not just processing one emotion or one trauma. You're processing everything you've ever repressed, and it's all demanding attention simultaneously. Your nervous system doesn't have capacity for this. It's like trying to download decades of files at once. The system overloads. You'll recognize this if you're experiencing emotional flashbacks with no clear trigger, if you're crying, raging, or panicking in ways that feel disproportionate to present circumstances, if old memories are surfacing with intensity that makes them feel like they're happening now. This isn't breakdown, it's breakthrough. Your psyche is finally processing what it's been storing for years. But emotional flooding is just one source of overwhelm. The second reason reveals a different kind of overload. Awakening overwhelms you because your sense of self is disintegrating while you still have to navigate daily life. You're experiencing identity death while trying to work, maintain relationships, make decisions, and function normally. And doing basic tasks becomes impossibly difficult when you don't know who you are anymore. Before awakening, you had a stable identity. I'm this type of person who does these things, values these qualities, responds this way. This identity was your operating system. It made decisions automatic, responses predictable, life manageable. But Jung discovered that awakening kills this identity structure, not modifies it, kills it. One of Jung's analysts described this terror. I'd wake up and not know who I was, not philosophically, literally. Someone would ask, "What do you want for dinner?" And I'd draw a blank. Not because I wasn't hungry, but because the I who had preferences didn't exist anymore. I'd go to work and think, who is this person showing up? What role am I playing? Everything felt like performance because there was no stable self performing anymore. Jung explained, my ego was dying, and trying to function during ego death is what created the overwhelm. This is what Jung called functional dissolution. You're supposed to make decisions, but there's no stable self to decide. You're supposed to interact with people, but you don't know who's interacting. You're supposed to work, parent, relate. But the psychological structure that made these things automatic is gone. Every task requires conscious effort that your overwhelmed system can't provide. The overwhelm intensifies because life doesn't pause for your transformation. You can't take 3 months off to die and be reborn. You have to pay bills, show up, fulfill responsibilities, all while experiencing the dissolution of the self that used to do these things effortlessly. It's like trying to drive while the car is being disassembled around you. You'll notice even simple decisions feel impossible. Basic interactions require enormous energy. Tasks you used to do automatically now demand conscious attention you don't have. This isn't depression or incompetence. It's trying to function during identity death. And identity death while maintaining function is inherently overwhelming. But identity dissolution is just one layer. The third reason reveals why your perceptual capacity is overloaded. Here's what Jung discovered. Awakening overwhelms you because your consciousness expands faster than your nervous system can adapt. You're suddenly perceiving dimensions of reality you couldn't see before. Symbols, energies, patterns, connections, meanings, and your brain doesn't have pathways to process this expanded perception yet. Think about what normal perception is. You see surfaces, hear sounds, process what's immediately relevant. Your nervous system filters out most of reality to prevent overload. But Jung observed that awakening removes these filters. Suddenly you're perceiving everything, the symbolic layer beneath surface events, the energetic dimension of interactions, the interconnected web of meaning underlying random occurrences. One of Jung's patients described this sensory explosion. Everything became too much. I'd walk into a room and be overwhelmed by emotional atmospheres I could suddenly feel. I'd look at a tree and see not just a tree, but an entire symbol system communicating something. I'd have a conversation and perceive 10 layers of meaning simultaneously. My nervous system couldn't handle it. I'd have to retreat to dark, quiet spaces just to stop the overload. Jung said my perception had expanded, but my nervous system hadn't developed capacity to process the expansion yet. This is what Jung meant by perceptual flooding. Your consciousness has opened to dimensions that were always there, but you couldn't perceive before. Now you can. But your nervous system is still wired for normal perception. It's like upgrading to high-definition vision, while your brain still has standard definition processing capacity. The overwhelm manifests as hypersensitivity, lights too bright, sounds too loud, crowds unbearable, emotions overwhelming. You're perceiving more data than your system can integrate, not from breakdown, but from expansion without corresponding infrastructure development. You'll recognize this if you've become extremely sensitive to everything, if normal environments feel overwhelming, if you need constant quiet, darkness, solitude just to regulate, if you're perceiving meanings, patterns, and connections that most people don't see but you can't not see. This isn't pathology, it's expanded perception without expanded processing capacity yet. But perceptual overload is just one challenge. The fourth reason reveals why your emotional capacity is overwhelmed. If awakening feels overwhelmingly intense, if you're flooded with repressed material, experiencing identity dissolution, perceiving more than you can process, Jung would say, you're not failing. You're undergoing transformation that places demands on your psyche beyond what it was designed to handle. Before we continue, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Now, these final reasons reveal why your system is working at maximum capacity. Jung's fourth insight. Awakening overwhelms you because your entire understanding of reality is collapsing, while a new understanding hasn't formed yet. You're in the void between worldviews, and humans aren't designed to function without a stable understanding of reality. Before awakening, you had a worldview that made sense of everything, maybe religious, maybe scientific, maybe somewhere between. But you had answers. This is what life means. This is how reality works. This is why things happen. This worldview was your psychological anchor. It organized chaos into coherent narrative. But Jung discovered that awakening demolishes your worldview, not just questions it, annihilates it. You see clearly that your explanations were constructions, not truths. Your meanings were imposed, not discovered. Your certainties were beliefs, not facts. And this recognition creates a terror unlike anything you've experienced. Reality itself becomes uncertain. One of Jung's analysans described this existential vertigo. Everything I believed about reality collapsed. God, science, meaning, purpose, all revealed as constructs I'd been using to make sense of chaos. And without those constructs, I was free-falling. I didn't know what anything meant anymore, why I was here, what anything was for. Jung said I was in the void between worldviews. My old understanding had died. My new understanding hadn't formed. And being in this void was psychologically unbearable. This is what Jung called cosmological crisis. Your map of reality has been destroyed. You're navigating without coordinates, without framework, without the basic structures that make existence comprehensible. Every moment requires tolerating fundamental uncertainty about the nature of reality itself. The overwhelm comes from having no stable ground. Every question, what is this? What does this mean? Why is this happening? Lands in emptiness. You're functioning without the basic certainties that make normal life possible. Not just philosophical uncertainty, but operational uncertainty. And your psyche wasn't built to operate in this level of groundlessness. You'll notice you can't answer basic metaphysical questions anymore. What happens after death? I don't know. Is there meaning in life? I don't know. What is consciousness? I don't know. This isn't ignorance. It's the collapse of the worldview that used to provide answers. And functioning in this void of understanding is inherently overwhelming. But worldview collapse is just one source of overload. The fifth reason reveals the final layer of overwhelm. Awakening overwhelms you because you're confronting your shadow, all the disowned parts of yourself, while still trying to maintain your social persona. You're integrating material you've rejected your entire life, while functioning in a world that requires you to present as stable, coherent, acceptable. Think about your shadow, everything you've deemed unacceptable about yourself: rage, selfishness, cruelty, sexuality, aggression, weakness. You've spent your life keeping these parts hidden, controlled, denied. But awakening brings them into consciousness, forces you to face them, integrate them, own them. And this is psychologically brutal. One of Jung's patients described this internal war. I was confronting parts of myself I'd always denied: my capacity for cruelty, my selfishness, my rage, all surfacing and demanding integration. But I still had to go to work, interact with family, maintain my good person persona. The gap between what I was facing internally and what I was presenting externally was tearing me apart. Jung said this was shadow integration while maintaining persona, and doing both simultaneously creates unbearable tension. This is what Jung meant by the double burden. Internally, you're integrating disowned parts, feeling emotions you've always suppressed, acknowledging truths you've always denied, accepting aspects you've always rejected. But externally, you still need to function in society that requires you to be presentable, stable, acceptable. The overwhelm comes from living in two realities simultaneously: the internal reality where you're chaos, where your shadow is surfacing, where nothing is acceptable, and the external reality where you need to be composed, where your persona must function, where everything must appear normal. Maintaining this split while integrating what you've always rejected is exhausting beyond measure. You'll recognize this if you feel like you're living a double life. If you're confronting your darkest parts in private while presenting as fine in public. If the gap between your internal experience and external presentation feels unsustainable. If you're exhausted from the effort of appearing normal while experiencing transformation that's anything but normal. Why your spiritual awakening feels so overwhelming. You're processing decades of repressed material simultaneously. Everything you've avoided is surfacing at once. Your identity is dissolving while you need to function, trying to operate during ego death. You're perceiving more than your nervous system can process. Expanded consciousness without expanded capacity. Your worldview is collapsing without replacement, functioning in fundamental uncertainty. You're integrating shadow while maintaining persona, internal chaos while external normalcy. Jung would want you to understand, this overwhelm is temporary but unavoidable. You're not doing it wrong. You're not broken. You're undergoing transformation that places simultaneous demands on your psyche that it wasn't designed to handle. The flooding isn't punishment, it's purging. The identity crisis isn't failure, it's transformation. The perceptual overload isn't pathology, it's expansion. The worldview collapse isn't loss, it's liberation. The shadow integration isn't breakdown, it's breakthrough. Most spiritual teachings promise that awakening brings peace. Jung told the truth. Awakening brings chaos first. Overwhelming, disorienting, exhausting chaos. The peace comes later. After the purging completes, after identity rebuilds, after nervous system adapts, after new worldview forms, after shadow integrates. But you have to survive the chaos phase first. The overwhelm typically lasts months, sometimes longer. Your job isn't to stop it, but to survive it. Not through fighting, controlling, or managing, through allowing. The flooding is necessary, the dissolution is required, the overload is part of expansion, the collapse is making space, the integration is completing you. If awakening feels overwhelmingly intense right now, if you're flooded, dissolving, overloaded, collapsing, splitting between internal chaos and external function, Jung would tell you, this is what genuine transformation feels like. Not enlightenment as marketed, transformation as it actually is. Stop trying to manage the overwhelm. Stop trying to control the flood. Stop trying to maintain stability while everything destabilizes. You're in the most intense phase of the most profound transformation humans can undergo. The overwhelm isn't a problem to solve, it's the process itself. Let yourself be overwhelmed, not by drowning in it, but by stopping resistance to it. The energy you're using to fight the overwhelm is making it unbearable. The moment you stop trying to control chaos and allow it, something shifts. Not from the chaos becoming less, from you becoming more capable of holding it. Get support. Find someone who understands this isn't pathology, it's transformation. Someone who can hold space while you fall apart. Someone who can say, this is normal when you're convinced you're going insane. Jung believed awakening requires witnessing. Don't do this alone. And know this. The overwhelm does end. Not through you fixing anything, but through your system gradually adapting to the transformation occurring. Your nervous system will develop capacity for expanded perception. Your psyche will integrate the repressed material. Your identity will rebuild authentically. Your worldview will reform more truthfully. Your shadow will be owned. But getting there requires surviving the overwhelm phase. And survival requires understanding. You're not drowning. You're transforming. And transformation feels like drowning until you learn to breathe underwater. You're learning now. Trust that your system knows how to do this, even when conscious you is terrified. Subscribe to explore Jung's insights on surviving the overwhelm phase of awakening. To dive even deeper into Jung's revolutionary psychology and what it means for your spiritual awakening, click the recommended video on your screen now.